just RSVP'd.
Production.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a.
Sounds Russian.
So yes, we're going to start our main event for the evening with Jamil Zainasheff. He is one of the most, if not the most accomplished home brewers around. He's also been very successful with Heretic Brewing Company up north. And he's an accomplished author and podcaster as well. And he is very happy to sit and talk with us tonight and answer our questions. And welcome, Jamil.
Oh, thanks for having me. First off, I probably should have checked how's my audio and video.
Your audio is awesome. I'm gonna. I have my next slide. I was gonna pull up here as the.
All right. Yeah, I'm working off a little tablet I've never used for Zoom meetings before in a hotel room off of sketchy Wi-Fi. So.
Well,
Awesome.
so far so good.
Technology.
Considering it's great.
So Jamil, do you want me to leave these up for you to talk about and to introduce these beers, or do you want me to take my screen down?
Whatever. I'd like to, whatever's best for the group. So the first one, I can hold them up. The California Dry Hopped IPA. It's kind of weird. One of the things that's always annoyed me about a lot of labels out there when they talk about IPAs, they talk about, oh, it's dry hopped IPA. It's like, well, in our definition of IPA, we always say it's dry hopped, right? Have you ever seen a definition of IPA that didn't include dry hopping? So we call it dry hopped IPA. But what this was is many years back, we never had an IPA available that was packaged for sale. I mean, we would have some in the tap room and things like that. We never put one in a bottle or a can, never even sold draft of it out to accounts. But because we had so many other beers to do. And at one point we were messing around with new hops, and we had been essentially getting every hop from the hop suppliers as new hops came out. And we sat down one day with tasting notes of every hop that we had. And I asked everybody on the brewing team, I said, come up with your own blend of hops, pick, a minimum of, 3 hops, and, come up with your blend that you think would make the best IPA possible. And then we'll brew all of them. And so everybody did, and we started out with IPA number 1, and that was somebody's blend of hops. And we did IPA number 2, IPA number 3, so on. And this turn was IPA number 6. We went to 7 and 8, but everybody kept asking for number 6 again. And so we ended up just stuck on IPA 6. And for the longest time in our tap room, this was just called IPA number 6. And we would send it out to accounts, and they're just like, why is it called number 6? We'd have to tell this whole long story over and over. And so at some point, I'm just like, well, yeah, why don't we go ahead and just package this? We'll come up with a label and all this. So I came up with this label just because it tasted like a good, every time I describe it to people, they say, well, what kind of beer is it? So, well, it's just a really good, standard California IPA. And that's really what it is. It's not super malty like a more Midwest version might be. That's fairly, it's got a nice malt character to it, but it's fairly dry. Good hop presence, firm bittering. Just overall round, good California style IPA. There's other states and other styles, but I think that this is, one of the better ones.
So Jamil, can you tell us what the 3 hops are, or because the Russians are listening in, you don't want to tell us?
Right. boy, this was actually my combination of hops during that exercise. And now I can't even remember what they were. It was so many years ago. I'd have to look it up. It is, I think, boy. Like
Now,
Citra.
Jamil, I told the club that we were not going to be able to stump you tonight. And look what we've already done.
All right, let me look this up. We've got time.
Well, speaking of not maybe doing things, not knowing what we're doing, Judy just pointed out to me that I've got the labels underneath these cans backwards. So while you're looking that up, I'm going to take some heat for messing up this slide.
I thought that was a test that, we saw that and we said, California dry hopped IPA, we looked up there, that's not right. We have to do that thing.
Nancy saw that within 5 seconds.
She didn't pick it up right there.
At some point, they were correct. I don't know where in the heck they got mixed up.
Let's
I
see
like
here.
it.
All right. On my phone, brewing logs. It has changed a little bit over the years, just based on, we couldn't get some of the hops again in the past. And sometimes we just found hops we like better. So this is Columbus, Idaho 7, Mosaic, Cascade from Crosby hops. And that's it.
Oh,
So Crosby, Cascade, Mosaic, Idaho 7, and Columbus. Columbus is just in the initial bittering. So it's mainly Idaho 7, Mosaic, Cascade. And that Cascade from Crosby, you go up and you get to do hop selection. If you buy a certain volume of hops, they'll have you come by and do hop selection from the cuts of hops. And one of the selections we were doing some years ago was up at Crosby, and he had maybe 10 cuts, brewers cuts. The hops get packed into, I don't know how much you guys know a lot about brewing, but some people may not know this. The hops get bundled into these 200-pound burlap rectangles, really dense packed rectangles of hops. And when a brewer's cut, they take a knife and they literally just cut into this giant brick of hops, and they cut out a thing that weighs a few pounds or a couple of pounds. And then they set that out for you. And then you just pick some off and you break it up in your hands and smell it and look at it, taste it, whatever you want to do. And that's a brewer's cut. And so they had laid out all these brewer's cuts, and we went through and tasted through them, or smelled through them, and looked at them and see which ones we liked. And Brian Crosby, he's like, I have a feeling which one you're gonna pick, because I know you're gonna pick those. One of them. And he wouldn't say anything about any of them. And it was interesting because some of like 1 or 2 cuts came from like Washington, Idaho. The rest were from Oregon, and the ones from Oregon, well, maybe a couple of them, maybe a few of them were from Washington, and then the rest were from Oregon, and a couple of them were from his farm, and a couple of them were from farms around him. And they couldn't have been more different. They were distinct. You knew if you said, hey, yeah, that one that smells like this, everybody else knew what you're talking about. They were so distinct. And some of these hops were grown just maybe a quarter mile away, not terribly far apart, but they may have been harvested at different times, or they were given different amounts of water at different times, and that really affects the character of the hops. Well, turns out the one that I liked, and the ones that that the people that were with me they liked too, was the one that Brian liked. He entered that into the Cascade Cup, which is a competition of all the Cascade hop growers. They all submit their crop of Cascade, and then they have a blind competition to pick the winner, and that one was the second place in the Cascade Cup that year. And it's just amazing cascades that they're growing up there at Crosby Farms. And so ever since then, it's like I know that Brian likes the same hop character that I do, and so it's easy for me to work with Crosby. So they're one of my favorites. So that's a big part of a beer like this.
Very, very tasty.
Yeah, you really want to find the hop characters that work for you, and that's pretty straightforward. Otherwise, we use a little crystal malt in this one. Normally, we don't. So it's all silo malt and then some crisp from England, crisp C45, and that's it. Real simple.
And real tasty. Thank you. What can you tell us about Worry?
Worry. This beer is actually one of the very first beers that we brewed. When we started brewing, maybe it was beer number 3 or 4, was a Belgian Golden Strong to be aged in Chardonnay barrels. And when we started, we're close to Napa. It's just a 20-minute drive from where we're at right now. And I went up and I made contact with the head winemaker at Gurgitch Hills. So if you know about wine, you've probably heard about how this little Napa winery entered a Chardonnay competition in France and put Napa on the map. Well, that's Gurgitch Hills. And so they have the most amazing Chardonnay. And the barrels we get from them, the fresh, empty Chardonnay barrels, nothing else has the character that those barrels have. We tried it in some other barrels, and I had to dump it because it wasn't anything like it. So,
oh my God,
the beer that you hold in your hand is probably 4 or 5 years in the making at this point, at least 4.
Wow.
So we brew the Belgian Golden Triple. It's kind of in between a Golden and a Triple. Ferment out, that uses White Labs 530 yeast. And then we add it to these wine barrels along with a little bit of Brettanomyces. And it sits in that barrel for a couple years. And then we transfer them into a stainless steel tank, carbonate it up, and package it. The interesting thing about this is that you see how bright golden that is. Doesn't something that spends 2 years in a wine barrel tends to look pretty brown. The reason that this looks so bright is because of the Brettanomyces. At one point, I was sampling through the barrels, and 2 of them poured out. They were brown. I mean, it looked like brown ale, and it was so stale. And I mentioned it to my guys. I'm like, hey, we missed these 2 barrels when we were adding the Brett to these things. They're like, well, oh, well, we'll just dump those. I'm like, no. I said, add the Brett now. So it'll be fine. I'm like, no, can't be fine. I'm like, just add the Brett to them. It'll remove the oxidation and the staling. They're like, no, you're wrong. I'm like, absolutely no, that's to the effect. And so we added the bread to them, and took maybe a month or two, and it was bright golden again. So it's the power of yeast to utilize those oxidation compounds is tremendous. I know people question whether it's true or not, but it's 100% true.
Jamil, how old were these Chardonnay barrels? Were they, used 2 or 3 times or longer?
Right. So when I get them, they'll give me a mix. I try and get the ones that are more neutral, not too much oak. Because if we're going to leave them in there for 2 years and there's a fair amount of oak character still left in them, the problem is it's going to become overly oaked. As it is, we hold on to some of the beer from the same batch. We just keg it and hold on to it in kegs while the beer matures in the barrel. So we have stacks of, half barrel kegs sitting for a couple of years. And then when it comes time to make the final product, we taste through all the worry barrels. And we pick the good ones, dump the bad ones, and then we blend in a certain amount of the unbarreled worry to reduce that oak tannin note. So the barrels I'm trying to get are, have been used or freshly emptied, but have been used a number of times so that the oak has been reduced. And that also makes them cheaper, because if there's still a lot of, oak left in them, Burgage Hills will use them themselves. And I don't want to pay, $600 for a barrel from them. They pay thousands for the new barrels. By the time I get them, they want, 100, $150 a piece. And, I'm so charming and I bring beer with me. And so we can get them down to like 90 a piece.
Is this really 10.6% alcohol?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What was the base beer, briefly?
The base beer is, it's Pilsner malt and about 10% sugar, I want to say. Maybe 15. And then 530 yeast and just some tiny amount of hops to give it a little bit of bittering.
And then finally, the name, you got to have some story behind the name, right?
I think when we were first making it, we hadn't done any beer like this, and the barrels and all that. It was we were concerned that this wasn't going to work out. We were literally worried about this beer turning out and how we were going to make this happen. So simply that, it's just like, all right, got to come up with a name. That and there's a musician that has a song, and the words in the song is trouble and worry. And so we were going to make 2 beers called Trouble and Worry, and Trouble Brewing is already taken. We only found that out after we had Worry going. And so the other beer that was supposed to be Trouble is actually called Torment. So that's a Belgian dark. So
Good. Well, I can't believe how fresh for being, like you said, 2 years old in a barrel, how fresh this tastes, and yet rich at the same time. It does not taste like a barrel aged beer from that standpoint.
yeah, there's a nice bit of Chardonnay to it. You get the Brett for sure. Get that oak.
It's more delicate than most barrel aged beers that I've had. It's which is, I think you said it even longer than 2 years in the, that it's been in the making. So I think it's pretty impressive. It's got a great balance between the Chardonnay, great flavors, and Belgian character from the the phenolics, and So yeah, this is really a great beer for us to be sharing today.
This is one of those things that I think you want to be careful about going too heavy-handed
No.
with any of the flavors, any of the characters. There's quite a bit of stuff going on in there. And I think if, any of them were allowed to be too prominent, then it would kind of ruin the whole experience. As it is, it's something it's like, wow, I could drink a pint of that, and that's what you want on every beer is not that you should be drinking pints of, 10.6%, beer, but you should want to, or at least be able to. Yeah, I think that's, one of the beauties of doing something like that. And it's one of the reasons that we hold back the some of the unbarreled beer in stainless so we can use it to adjust down and blend back to make sure we're getting just that nice balance between, oh yes, here's the Belgian character, here's the barrel character. It's not, if you taste the beer out of the barrel by itself, it's pretty intense, after 2 years. It's got quite a bit of barrel character to it. So it's nice to be able to dial that down a little bit.
Do we have any more questions for Jamil on the worry? Okay. Well, I do have some questions.
I got a quick one, Lauren, if I may, Jamil.
Sure, John.
How did you, Gergich is known for their Chardonnay, going back into the 70s and just world class in those days when Mike Gergich was still making the wine. How did you pick them or happen upon them, or how did that happen?
Well, I knew the Gergich story and the character of their Chardonnay, and I think it has quite a bit of Chardonnay character to it, and so when I was looking at, I wanted Chardonnay to be an important aspect of this beer, and so because of that, when I reached out to Napa wineries, they were really one of the very first, and it's the one that I wanted to work with. So that's how that kind of came to pass, and I was lucky enough that I found the email for the head winemaker, or maybe it was just a general info email, and I reached out to him, and he was like, yeah, I've got some barrels I could sell you. And he was real nice. And then, I just, whenever you go to one of these places, and just be nice to whoever you're dealing with. It's not part of their regular job to deal with stuff like this. So always, be nice, bring some beer, be friendly, and, develop a relationship with whoever you're working with. So over the years, he's gone now, but over the years, they were able to supply me with the barrels.
What was their reaction? Did you provide some beer to them, and did they taste this beer so far? I imagine they would.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, when you say, "Oh yeah, we threw Brett in it," and this, first off, they're like, "We put Brett in our barrels," and the other is, you're not bringing a beer with Brett around our winery, so they don't want the beer at the winery. They would come from the winery to the brewery and taste it there, but they did not want me bringing beer with Brett to the winery. That's how freaked out a lot of winemakers are about Brett. But It's in pretty much every barrel. It's everywhere. So
You knocked it out of the park with that one, Jamil. It's a great beer.
well, thank you. That's very kind of.
Do you think how much do you think the barrel added to the ABV?
Oh, really, it depends a lot on humidity, because if you have a more humid environment or a drier environment, you're going to lose or gain ABV. So there's places where you actually lose ABV. It doesn't go up; it goes down because the humidity is higher. Or there's drier areas where you lose more moisture and the ABV goes up. So it depends on your environment. For us, it's pretty neutral. We might gain a little bit. We don't lose any. We tend to just gain a bit over time, but not much. The beer itself generally is brewed out around 10% or so. I don't really remember on this batch whether it was maybe a little bit over, and then when we barreled it, but then we blend it back with unbarreled, and that takes it back down. It ends up, little this, little that. So we end up having to test it at the end.
Well, I have to say that is an amazing beer. And I'm going to move on, but Jamil, I'm going to ask you about Heretic and what's new. What's the news at Heretic? And maybe what's been new for you to get through our times of the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, new is where a couple of things. One is we got in a little 5-barrel brew plant to act as like a little pilot system, and we're having some fun with that. One of the reasons we did is because COVID. It was seemed like a good idea to be able to, because prior to COVID, it was easier to, we brew about 30 barrels at a time. And, prior to COVID, we could take, 5 or 10 barrels and serve it in our tap room. And then the other 20 barrels, we could send that out to random one-off accounts, and it'd be no big deal to have a variety through the tap room. But with COVID, it became difficult because, we couldn't send to outside accounts anymore. So if we wanted to brew something, we'd have to get rid of 30 barrels right in our own tap room. And then with the shutdowns, limiting capacity. So I was like, all right, finally, my guy's been asking for a 5-barrel brew plant for forever. It's like, all right, well, buy a 5-barrel brew plant. Because for us, labor is one of the most expensive parts of brewing a beer. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to brew 5 barrels when you can brew 30 at the same time. If you have a 10-barrel, brewery at your house versus 5, it's like, how much more effort is it to brew 10 gallons, right? Versus 5, same amount of effort, or almost identical.
Yeah.
And the ingredients really are not the expensive part in commercial brewing. Malt is relatively cheap. Some of the hops are really expensive, but malt is cheap. Labor's pricey, and hops are pricey. So if you're going to brew, you might as well brew, full-size batch instead of a 5-barrel. But we got that, so that's a lot of fun, and it really reminds me a lot more of home brewing and just messing around. And there's strange things that I do, or weird hops that we try. And then, so the AHA homebrew competition, the nationals, last year, I announced some category for them, and we're brewing that person's beer as a pro-am. And then I got to announce a category again this year. I can't tell you what category or anything, but the winner of that, I'm offering to do a pro-am with them at Heretic as well. And the 5-barrel allows us to do that. Some of these beers I can't do 30 barrels of some of these beers. I want to open to every category. I don't want to say, oh, would have brewed your beer, but it's not going to be commercially successful. So tough luck. I'd rather be able to brew anything. So we're able to do that. So that's fun. And then we've really, we started a distillery, got our distillery license back at the end of 2016. And so we've been, messing around with that, doing stuff that mainly we sell out of the tap room. We don't really sell it much elsewhere. We do flavored vodkas, gins, some whiskeys. And but we started when the pandemic hit, we kind of pivoted, and one of the things we started to do was put cocktails in those square plastic juice bottles with the tamper-proof lids. We started filling those up, selling those, and people loved them. They were just like, going crazy for them. I'm like, all right, well, we should go ahead and can this. And so now we're doing canned, ready to drink cocktails, a line of them. And we're having a lot of fun with that. There's every Thursday we sit down and taste all the new tests and come up with new ideas. And so we're having a lot of fun, going, hey, how about this cocktail? How about that cocktail? So that's a lot of what's new. And so we're starting to crank a lot of those out and have fun with that. And that's really how we survived the pandemic. Was every time the shutdowns were brutal. Cost us about a third of our revenue, I think. And, so we ended up, trying to do things like, have specials and, new foods. We were cooking family meals at one point, whole chickens and, all sorts of other meals that lasagna meals, and people would buy those, and that was helpful. And different drinks and different programs to help keep the money flowing. So it was really tough. One of the things we didn't want to let go of any of our employees. So in the brewery, we didn't have to, short anybody hours or anything. At least initially, there was a point we had to trim back on some hours, but able to keep everybody in the brewery. In the tap room, those people suffered the most because the tap room was, essentially completely shut down. It was to go only. So we're able to keep the staff on to go only, but it was tough, really tough time. We were able to make for the distillery. We took the distillery off of making booze to drink and started making hand sanitizer. So all that stuff that we've been running to make gin and vodka, and whiskey, and all that, we started turning it into hand sanitizer. All that hard work went into doing the WHO FDA approved hand sanitizer formula, and we sold about 700 gallons of hand sanitizer, essentially at cost, to U.S. Postal Service, to the Kaiser hospital system, to a bunch of schools, a bunch of nursing homes, police departments in cities, sheriff's department, highway patrol, some individual nurses. So it actually made us feel pretty good that we were, doing something to help people that were, there was no sanitizer to be found. And the amount of people that were asking me for sanitizer, and people were like, look, I'll pay anything. I'll pay you triple what you're asking. I'm like, no, I'm selling it for, what it costs us to break even. And, I'm targeting the local community first. People want me to ship it all over. I'm like, I'm sorry, but there must be distilleries in your area that could do this.
Right.
Reach out to them, tell them that other distilleries are doing it. And I give them the links to the FDA and WHO and the TTB, waiver that would allow you to do this. And so, we were struggling just to produce enough for our local area. But luckily, a lot of the distilleries, they jumped in and helped out. And, you know, I don't know, but I think it could have saved some lives. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not saying we're anything special, but I think by doing something that's trying to be helpful in a situation where people are struggling, that makes you feel good no matter what happens. So
Yeah,
real-
that's pretty amazing story. I know that there were breweries that were basically needing to do stuff with beer that had expired, and distilleries were taking those on and turning it into sanitizer, like you said, for the communities. And just amazing the stories that you hear about the different craft brewers and distillers that are trying to contribute and trying to survive all at the same time, right? I know I was buying my sanitizer from a local distiller just to make sure that they were, well, that I was getting sanitizer and that they were getting the business along with selling regular product.
Yeah, now you're not talking about buying drinking sanitizer. That wasn't what you were doing.
I wasn't drinking the sanitizer that I bought. No.
Only Chris's.
Yeah. So did I hear you say that you didn't have to lay anybody off even in the tasting room?
You know, we had a few people that decided they didn't want to work, and so that was fine. And you know, in the tasting room, we had to cut some hours,
Right.
for people, but you know, people were able to file for unemployment to make up those hours. So all in all, you know, we got a great crew, people that really have worked very hard for, you know, many years to help make Heritage successful. And so, you know, I think they want to see it do well. And so they, you know, they're dedicated. You know, they put a lot of effort in, and you know, God bless them. They're good people, and you know, yeah, some of the people, you know, it's tough.
So Jamil, is it on the upswing now?
Definitely, yeah. As you know, people are getting vaccinated, and the you know, the weather's changing, and the restrictions are lifting. You know, June 15th, we expect it to be all out insanity again. But we were able to also just take a portion of the parking lot out front of our place. They have kind of like a tiny patio out there, but we're able to grab like another 1,200 square feet of space and put tables out there. We put some tents up, went to Harbor Freight, bought some tents, popped them up there, put some outdoor carpeting out, some tables. And with that, we were, you know, able to seat about half the number of people that we normally did. But instead of being, you know, completely shut down, you know, we had 50% traffic. When it was pouring rain and the wind was blowing, maybe it wasn't so good, but you know, the number of people that were still out there with it just driving sideways rain coming at them, for sideways freezing rain, and they were just still sitting there enjoying a beer. I was like, this is amazing. And you know, our taproom guy, manager, he was like, you know, maybe we should close on these days. I'm like, nope. I said, you know, if there's one person out there, you know, enjoying a beer, we got to respect that, and you know, stay open for them. You know, I don't want to have our hours posted, and then, you know, somebody you know, comes down for a pint, and then they're just like, well, there wasn't enough people. It's like, that's always a, you know, I don't like that personally. That always upsets me. So yeah, that helped. And then when we went to 25%, you know, combining our 25% indoor with the 50% outdoor, we're kind of at 75%. So that helped. And you know, as it, you know, goes back to normal, you know, we're gonna kind of keep that outdoor percentage for at least for a little while, because we used to get completely slammed and full and not have space for people. So having a little extra outdoor space for a while may help make up for that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people Related question. Plan. So
Lauren, you're chopping up.
Yeah. Okay, good. It's not me.
It's not. You're chopping up, Lauren.
So, yep, one more serious COVID question, and then we're gonna move on to different topics. But my understanding is that Budweiser is going to be giving beer vouchers to everyone in the U.S. if and when we reach a 70% vaccination rate. So my question to you is Heretic going to considering doing something like that, or will you be honoring Budweiser vouchers?
That's an interesting question. So the issue is this: we're not legally allowed to give somebody beer. We have to always charge more than it costs us to make it plus a percentage. And what that percentage is, they never want you to give away beer. There's all sorts of weird rules, especially in California, against discounting beer and how you're offering beer to somebody. I can't say, oh, buy a beer and I'll give you one. That's illegal. I can say, I can give you 50% off on beer, as long as it's above my cost of producing it, plus whatever margin they say is needed. If I want to give you food and beer, I can say, I can't, give you a free beer with your meal, but I can give you a food and beer package that if the sum total of it is more than what it costs me to make the food and the beer plus some margin, then I'm allowed to do that. But it can't be discounted less than the combined sum total of those things. So I know certain states, they've enacted laws that would allow somebody to give someone a beer, one beer for free if they show like a vaccination record or something like that, which they haven't done in California. I'm not sure how Budweiser could give somebody a voucher. I don't know what the voucher is for. Is it for like a free beer or is it for something else?
It's for Budweiser. I also admit I heard that we can't get the vouchers in California, and I think you just explained why.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so in certain states it's probably possible. What I could maybe do is if people brought me the vouchers, I could somehow do something. I don't know. I could discount it down to the price of what it costs us plus that whatever that mystery margin is. Or
Jamil, it was sort of a joke question. You answered the question right.
It may be a real statement on the value of Budweiser beer. A free voucher, just saying, cost of the beer.
Right. That right, exactly. Or if people brought it to me, I'm allowed to give away food. Regardless of what the food cost me. I can actually, somebody brought me in a voucher, I could give them like a free meal or something. I don't know. I'd be up for it, Yeah. Every voucher that Budweiser is giving away, I welcome those folks to come down. I'd be happy to do whatever.
That's really funny.
It's good because we have the recording here now, so we can, play it back to him if he forgets, what he promised.
Right. As long as it's legal, I'm always up for it. This is why my wife doesn't want me to do these things, because I promise all sorts of stuff. But we deliver. Always deliver.
Well, thanks for taking our not so serious question seriously.
Sure.
That's
I take every question seriously. I'll give you a detailed answer to any question.
A couple of questions.
You're
You
going
wanna-
digital again there, Lauren.
Oh, really? I'm sorry about that. Derek Springer, you had a couple of questions. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah, hey, how's it going? My first question was, I'm gonna call it here. Yeah, so your brewing classic styles, of course, is basically required reading for all homebrewers. And I'm just wondering, now that you're, gosh, what, almost 15, when was that published? 2008, 2007? Anyway, 15 years or 10 years or so since publishing it. Is there anything that you feel like you would redo if knowing what you know now, or disavow entirely?
Yeah, there's, I always believe, you need to be learning all the time, and you need to, sometimes you learn more and it reaffirms what you knew before, and you wouldn't change, that a recipe because of that. But there's also things that you learn, and while what you may have thought before wasn't wrong, there may be a better way of doing it now, an easier way or a more consistent way, or there's little tweaks and changes on all that. So yeah, I'm real proud of that book and all those recipes. I mean, it took me so many brews and so many entries and competitions and so much study and so much time to come up with all those recipes and to put them together, that I'm really proud of that. But I'd really like to do a second version of that book and take everything that I've learned, especially with commercial brewing for the last 10 years. There's a lot of other things I've learned that I think apply to brewing in general, that I think are helpful. There's the styles have also morphed over time. If you look at something like New England IPA, there's new IPA styles. There's changes to West Coast IPA. West Coast IPA has morphed over time. Back when I wrote that, it was still a little bit more crystal malt in it, and it's become even drier and brighter now. So there's a lot of little, I mean, even to the point people started doing brut IPA, right? So there's a lot of other things to put in there. If you ever read any of my brew your own articles, I did brew your own style profile for 8+ years. And in each one of those, I was allowed to write a lot more than I was in Brewing Classic Styles. Brewing Classic Styles, Ray Daniels just wanted a recipe. He didn't want any description, any of the stories, right? He was like, extract recipe only, that's it. I'm like, well, I'm going to add the all grain. He's like, well, okay. I'm like, a little explanation. He's like, well, keep it short. And so the book was supposed to be, I think, 50,000 words, below 50,000 words. It was over 80 by the time it was done. But I think people appreciate that. They like a bit of the story behind why. If you just wanted a book of recipes, well, go on the internet or whatever. There's lots of recipes out there. But getting more information. So in the brew your own articles, it started out, they told me, well, don't go over like 1,800 words. Then I was like, well, they go, this one's closer to 3,000. It's fine. They go, write as much as you want. They go, people like it. And so I would like to do a book with that explanation of, here's what you're trying to achieve. Here are the ranges that you should consider for these ingredients and why you would use this ingredient and how it affects this beer. And then here's a series of recipes. Like when I did dry stout, I did a recipe for, this is like Guinness, this is like Murphy's, and this is like Beamish, so people could have help them understand why it is and what it is you're doing. And the goal of that whole thing is so that you learn to be a better brewer, that you know what to do to craft your own recipes. And so that was the goal of it. And I think if I could do a second version, I would make every single one of them like those BYO articles. I write them out fully and explain everything. And it would end up being like this giant, Encyclopedia Britannica book or whatever. But maybe one of these days I'll get a chance to get that finished. I kind of started on it just recently, and I just don't know when I could get it wrapped up, but I'm working on it. Does that answer your question in a long roundabout way?
Yeah, no, I look forward to the second volume.
It sounds like it will, but definitely worth having and having as a reference. I was seeing in the chat that people were saying, yeah, if you don't know why, then it doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, why, everybody I've ever met in homebrewing really want to know why a lot of the time. It's not having fun and all that, but if you didn't care about, the why, you would just go buy beer. The part of the reason you homebrew is the science, the thrill, the intrigue behind making beer. It's so special that you want to know, you want to be part of the in the know circle of making that beer, versus just doing whatever.
Yeah. I've got a question. Hopefully I'm not breaking up too badly. I'm someone who in the past has very seriously considered going pro with my wife. It turns out that Lauren is way too chicken to be running his own business, rather work for someone else instead. But I'm wondering, as someone who has gone pro, sort of what has been the best part of going pro for you, and what's maybe the worst part, or what do you miss about being a homebrewer that you just can't do anymore?
The best part is the people. So it's actually, as a homebrewer, the best part of it was, meeting other people that homebrewed, that had the same passion and enjoyed it, and the same curiosity and that aspect of it. And then when I started doing writing articles and doing like the Brewing Network stuff, the best part of that was meeting more people and being exposed to more people that were passionate about it, making, adding more to my homebrew family, to my homebrew friends and family, right? And then, the commercial aspect of it, I already had a lot of, friends that were commercial brewers, but it really started to, open me up to a different set of people that were also, part of that community. So that was really the best part of it, was, having a reason to travel, or to pay for travel, other than I just wanted to go. So one of my things is, people will ask us like, well, why do you distribute to Taiwan, but I can't get it in Washington? It's like, well, it's easy for me to just go to Washington myself, but Taiwan, I can't go there unless we distribute beer there, because I can't get my wife to pay for a trip to Taiwan because I just want to go. But if we're distributing there, and it becomes work, I'm going to work, my dear.
So Jamil, is Is that why
So
I
having-
found Heretic in Wahoo when I was there a couple weeks ago? Because it's
Sure.
it's now work, right? So you get to
Exactly. So that's one of the cool things is, you know, one, I do believe that, you know, everybody in the world deserves access to great beer. And, you know, and the more you meet people from other countries that are into beer and into brewing, you know, you realize, you know, they're just as passionate, just as interested, and they want, you know, quality beer. And, you know, they're as excited to get US beer as, you know, you are to get, you know, something from Belgium or something, you know, you know, it's you know, it's a passion. And getting to go and experience those countries and you know, try their beer over there, it's a blast. And when it's, you know, work related, when we distribute beer there, you know, it's work related. And I do go and work, but it's work that I really enjoy. So those are the things that I really love about it. The things I don't like about brewing commercially is that it's commercial, that you have to make money at it. You know, being a home brewer, and I still consider myself a home brewer, we just do it at a much larger volume, and we're allowed to charge people money for it. The 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 thing I don't like about it is, you know, charging money for beer. You know, as a home brewer, you open your garage to your neighbors and your friends, and you just like, yeah, taps are right there, glasses are there, you know, and you share your beer with everybody. And when you brew commercially, you have to charge people and you have to make money at it. And all of a sudden it becomes, oh, okay, well, you know, uh, like I was talking earlier about, you know, doing these pro-am beers, we have to do it 5 barrels because some of these beers are not commercially viable. It doesn't matter, you know, how great a beer it is. It could be the best, you know, I don't know, whatever random style it is. You know, the only people that want it are, you know, other home brewers and, you know, ultra beer geeks. Um, you know, the general beer drinker has very little interest in some of those things. And so you can't, I mean, you could sell 5 barrels, sure, you could sell 10 barrels, but you can't sell, you know, on a commercial scale and really make it viable. I mean, you could sell in your tap room, and if you've got a small tap room, you know, that's perfectly fine. But even then, you're going to find that, you know, you're going to struggle to move a lot of an odd beer. You know, one of my favorite things is a British mild, but doesn't matter. You could have the greatest British mild in the world. You're not going to sell hardly any of it in a tap room. It's going to be a struggle. A friend of mine, Jason Ledford at True Symmetry Brewing, brewery's about 10 miles from mine, and he has a British mild on all the time. And I can't imagine he's selling very much of it. Maybe, you know, but he does it because he likes it, you know. So it's the same reason, you know, you homebrew because you liked it, but you know, you're just not going to sell a whole lot of those beers. And it's disappointing, you know.
Lauren, if I may jump in here, Jamil, you told a story a number of years back on Brewing Classic Styles. Speaking of going to Asia, you had just come back from an Asian tour, and you were discussing the glory of the bidet. And you said, if you were to take your truck off-roading, you don't come home and wipe it down with newspaper, you bring out the hose.
Right.
I recently have become a fan of a bidet, and I'd love to say I quote you all the time for that. And thank you, because it's so simple genius. So I wanted to say thank you for that little nugget of wisdom.
Bless you, brother. Yes, absolutely. And one of the funny things is, so we're building out. You know, food trucks can be challenging for a tasting room because while some of them are great, there's a lot of them that are not very reliable. And so they won't show up, or they'll leave early, or they won't bring enough food, or whatever. And then your customers are sitting there, no food, and they all tend to leave. So we decided to put in a kitchen. I'm like, well, here's some extra space above it. Let's put in, some offices above it. I mean, you got offices, you got to have a little restroom, and all this. So putting in the restroom, and I went to the electricians. I'm like, hey, I need an outlet, 120 outlet, 15 amp circuit right here. And they're like, what for? This is where the toilet is. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna put in one of them heated Japanese toilet seats right here. They were like, what? What is wrong with you? I'm like, just put the outlet in here. I'm like, all right. So they put the outlet in, and so if you come down to Heretic, you mentioned the story, I will show you the Japanese. I only let you use our Japanese toilet up in the offices, the VIP restroom there. And up there, yes, it is the best of the world.
Jamil, I will take you up on that one day. Just remember the last name Zukowski.
There you go. And that fellow Z, or CZ, or however you spell it. Yeah.
PZ. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, that was interesting. Hey, Mr. Sean Bush, I'm gonna. We're really shortly running out of time, slightly over time. Are you cool with sticking with us for a few more minutes, Jamil?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Sean, you want to ask?
Yeah, I only have about 20 questions, but
yeah, well, you might want to pick. You might want to pick one.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm just gonna say that I picked up this book a while back, and I use it as a baseline. I mean, I really appreciate it. If I don't know where to start, there is the internet, but you never know what you get with the internet. I might sound like an advertisement. With this book, I know what I get. I get a good baseline. So I put some stuff right out of here. Some stuff I mix. Given that hops have changed, I mean, I can't find Horizon anywhere in a homebrew shop anymore. If you talked about changing some of the recipes or maybe updating the book, what would you do as far as revamping the hop combinations? Would you drop some hops and add some hops? How would you approach that?
Oh, definitely, because some of those hops you can't even find anymore, I think. Same thing on malts, and there's new malts, there's new hops, and some hops I think are better in certain beers than if you're talking about a good IPA. What I say, we're using Mosaic, Idaho 7, and Cascades in this California IPA. It's like, well, only one of those hops existed when that book was written. So,
yep.
If there's better ingredients that make a better beer, and also tastes change over time as well. So, 50 years ago, nobody would have, everyone would have spit out something made with Simcoe, or Mosaic. So today, those are great hops. So yeah, I definitely would do a lot of work, especially on the hop forward beers. When it comes to some of the more traditional styles, some of those German lagers and things like that, it's become really hard to find, like some middle fruit, some really well-made middle fruit, things like that. So you might, change those up, or I'd offer options on what hops to use. Again, if I do it more like the BYO article, then I would go through, what kind of hop character you're looking for. Here's, the hops that, kind of fit this bill today. And maybe, 10 years from now, they're going to come out with other hops. And you would at least know, what you're looking for and what not to include in there. Sometimes there's hops that have this character, but there's a character you don't want in a certain beer. And so I think that's just as important. So yeah, that would definitely be something to address.
So what's your favorite hop combination right now as today?
It's got to be Cali IPA, I guess. I don't know. We're doing a lot more hop combinations and a lot more, hop forward beers. Here's one of the weird things about having a brewery is, we run across people all the time that, and I guess, homebrewers get this too, where somebody's had some of your beers, but not all of your beers. And so they're like, oh, you're that brewer that makes those really hoppy beers. Yeah, that's us. Right. Oh, you're that brewer that makes those sours, those barrel-aged sours that are so good. Yeah, that's us. Oh, yeah, you're a brewer. You make those Belgian beers. Oh yeah, that's us. We make everything. And a lot of homebrewers the same way. But somebody tries some of your stuff and they think, oh, you get pegged as one thing or another. That's why I'm Mr. Malty, right?
Cool. Well, thank you very much. I loved all of the podcasts that you did on the Brewing Network, and you've had a profound influence on my brewing. So I appreciate it. Mahalo.
Oh, thank you very much.
Andy, would you like to take over with your questions?
Sure. So Jamil, I'm going to try to squeeze a couple questions into this. I've been brewing for over 30 years, and I have not brewed all of the different beer styles, but quite a number of them. And I still every year find myself reaching for new beer styles that, well, I haven't brewed one of those. Let's try that. And the first place I go to your publications and I say, okay, what did Jamil say about this? And I think I'm a good enough brewer that I can take a recipe and I can look at it and I can say, okay, here's how I'll make it my own. I'll do this with it. I'll do that with it. And this kind of stuff, but it's always a great starting point. So I really appreciate everything that you've done for the craft. And so that's where I'm starting. One of the publications that you did was on a wort chilling process. And you talked about using an immersion chiller with a recirculating system to try to bring wort down pretty quickly with the recirculating system, and then also adding ice into that to bring it down further. And I had tried so many different chilling systems, and I mean, it's probably embarrassing how many different ones I've tried that haven't really worked out for my system. And when I looked at your publication and I emulated that, it worked out great for me. And the only problem I'm having right now is that everything chills down really quickly, but I run things through with a pump, and because I'm recirculating the wort as I'm running the chilling through the immersion system, and I'm finding that my cold break isn't as good as it would be, because I'm churning everything up when I'm recirculating things. And I'm just wondering if you have any tips for me on that from your experience.
Right. So your cold break is as good or probably better because of the drop in temperature. The break material may be chopped up into smaller particles, but they're still big enough that they should drop out of solution quite readily. So you won't see those large chunks of tofu floating by in the thing. But once they get chopped up, and then you'll see it all distributed, but it should all settle out pretty quick. If you're not, then I'm not sure what the issue is there. But I mean, that is one of the drawbacks to recirculating the wort that way. If you don't like that, the other thing you can do is just take a paddle and stir your wort, a couple of times. It will not go quite as fast as pumping it around, which is kind of continuous, but it'll drop pretty fast when you do that. And the whole way I came across this was, for some reason I started stirring my wort with maybe I was trying to add something. I don't know. I stirred the wort with my immersion chiller, and all of a sudden I burnt my hand because all of a sudden it took up a ton of heat. I'm like, oh, so it took a lot of heat out when I stirred it, and that kind of got me to. Then I was like stirring it like crazy with my wort chiller, and that was not the best method, and that's what got me to starting to then I tried stirring with a spoon, giant spoon, homebrewer spoon, and then I went into just putting a little recirc pump. But yeah, I don't know. I think does it drop clear for you over fairly quick after?
So I've started,
after that?
yeah, so it's sort of, if I let it give it a little bit of settling time, it'll start dropping down and a little bit
Yeah.
better. I've started trying to run the pump at a little slower speed just to not
Man,
chop things
it'll-
up as much.
it'll still chop it
Yeah.
up. But what I would do is, one of the advantages to this is you can leave it all nice and covered up, and you can pump it back in, and get your temperature down, and then once it's reached temperature, stop everything and just let it sit, and then let everything fall out. And it should drop clear. Maybe it takes 30 minutes. But
Yeah.
that's okay. You can afford to leave 30 minutes, especially if it's covered and everything's been sanitary. I mean, you've been brewing 30 years, which I'm sure you got your skills down over 30 years. You're brewing longer than me.
Yeah, I think if I let it sit, that's what I've noticed. If I let it sit, and especially at the cooler temperature, it drops,
Yeah.
it settles and
Right.
things like that.
Yeah,
So
you should still get pretty
Okay.
brilliant wort out of it. Yeah.
cool. Okay.
So how many of the styles have you brewed?
Oh, that's good. I mean, it just seems like there's just endless how many different things you can do,
Mhm.
and I just try to make it a point that every year there's 3 or 4 different things that I'm doing. I mean, I get a lot of demand from friends to brew the same thing over and over again, which is probably what you get as a commercial brewer. And, so you got to do that. You got to send your beer out to weddings and things like that. But there's the creative part of me, wants to try out, different things and do new things. And so every year there's at least 3 or 4 different, new ones that completely different things that I've never tried before. And there's still other things. I've never done a Baltic porter. I mean, so, maybe that'll be on the list next year. I don't know.
Work your way through the list.
So
there is a satisfaction to completing them all.
yeah, and I mean, obviously you've gone through the whole thing, at least per the style guidelines, and so that's pretty admirable. So there's something that you have to say on all of them, which is pretty good. And maybe that leads me into really the last question, which is we had a meeting. We've had meetings on a lot of different topics in this club. And one of the things that we do usually for our January meetings, because we meet the first Wednesday of every month, and that's right at the beginning of the year, is we do something that's fairly lighthearted, sometimes, kind of pretty crazy. And one of the meetings that we had was on brewing disasters. And we had people come out and tell their stories about, what happened in their brewing disasters. And I think the story that I told was, a brew session that I did where, in the morning, my wife was asking me why there was wort on the ceiling, and there's a whole story behind it. And so my question for you really is, do you have a brewing disaster you did maybe as a home brewer that you want to share with us and confide with us, knowing that, the Russians are listening in and, we're recording this information?
It involves a Japanese toilet. I just want to say.
Okay.
Talk about wort on the ceiling. It's one of those things. No, I think my worst brewing disaster was, I think, people have asked this before, and it was when I was making like a beer to guard, and everything was perfect and flawless, and it just worked out beautifully. And I was so excited about this recipe, and I was so excited about the pitch of yeast that I had for it. And then I was running it into the carboy. It was brilliantly clear. The color was perfect. The gravity was perfect. Everything flawless. And was running into the carboy. And then I went inside to do something. I don't know what it was. I came back out, and it must have been the moment I left, it all started pouring on the ground, because there wasn't anything but, just like, an inch or two at the most in the bottom of the carboy. All the rest had poured on the ground. It's like, oh my God, I lost like the whole thing. And so then I'm standing there with the yeast, and I was like, okay, well, I just poured the whole thing in there, and I got like, maybe a 6-pack of beer out of it. And I think I ended up just entering it in competition, because I think I was brewing it for a specific competition. It won. It was
Wow.
great.
That's not a
Best
disaster
show
story. Wait a
or
minute.
whatever. Yeah, I'm just like, I didn't have any of the beer. I was just like, hey, I got gypped out of 4.5 gallons worth.
Wow. That's a great story. Appreciate that. Well, Lauren, back to you. I don't know if we have any other questions or anything like
No,
that.
I think we've taken enough of Jamil's time. How enjoyable has this been? Oh my goodness.
Been very cool.
Okay. Well, thanks. I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun.
I'm gonna raise a glass to Jamil, the Brewing Classic styles, and everything that he's done for all of us. I've got some worry here. I'm going to toast to Jamil. Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening. It's been great.
Thank you, Jamil.
Thanks,
Okay,
Jamil.
anytime, brother.
Yeah, thank you, Jamil.
Cheers.
Mahalo.
Cheers.